Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with this week's 6 shocking stories.
Our first story is called Clean Your Ass. I don't think anybody's going to predict where this one's going. So this one was actually submitted by a grocery member. So a paraplegic male in his 30s arrived at the hospital in a wheelchair. He had complaints of abdominal pain and constipation for 3 days. So the doctors decided to do an x-ray. And what did they see?
Well, they saw some hardware in his spinal column, which is typical if a person has had some kind of spinal cord injury or repair for some kind of underlying disease that they had in their vertebral bones. So that was expected, right? But they also saw what appeared to be a shower head.
Yeah, like a full shower head up his booty. I don't know. I guess we talk about this all the time. I can't fathom sticking this whole thing up there.
So in this case, it actually makes more sense. And let me tell you why. So when you're you know what a paraplegic is? Yeah. Okay. So it's somebody that's paralyzed from the waist down, basically. And that could happen either if they have a spinal cord injury or if they have some kind of disease, like they have maybe a history of an infection there, or they have some kind of tumor that's affecting it. So it could happen both accidentally, intentionally, whatever, and also naturally. But what happens is a lot of times these patients, especially ones that have full paralysis, they can't use their bowels, right? So they have this whole other problem of either not being able to go to the bathroom or going when they don't want to go because they don't have the urge to poop like regular people do, right? So they have to be set up for these bowel programs to really help them. And it's a combination of nutrition, eating, and just knowing how the body works, because normally you have this response that when you eat, it triggers you to have to poop. And a lot of people ignore that. Obviously, that's why people get constipation and stuff. But if you ever notice when you feed a cat or a dog, when you feed them, they want to poop afterwards because that's just like a normal mammal response. So they teach people behavioral stuff like that, but they also teach them how to manually get it going by stimulating their anus. So that's just like sticking their fingers up there and kind of stimulating it to get it move along, or putting an enema up there, or even actually sticking their fingers up there and like actually pulling the poop out of themselves.
Oh my God.
So, and it sounds terrible. And this is why it's not just, okay, if you're a paraplegic, you're in a wheelchair. It's like there's all these other things that come along with it too. And obviously, even if you're in a wheelchair, you could still enjoy a fulfilling life. But when you're out in public, you don't want to accidentally shit yourself. You also don't want to become impacted because that could cause terrible things as well. So maybe the fact that he's kind of been doing this, it just wasn't, and he doesn't really have feeling down there. It was a lot easier to get a shower head up there than normally would. I don't understand, because you're thinking like, okay, if you're paralyzed down there, then you're not getting the sexual sensations. So I don't understand exactly why he would be doing it. The regular reason why people do it to stimulate the prostate, you know?
Well, yeah, and then the weirdest part of this is when the doctor showed him the x-ray, he just said, "It's my toy." Like,
yeah,
what are you talking about?
I don't know. So I definitely would have more questions for him, but this is definitely an interesting case.
Oh, for sure. All right, the next one is called Just When You Thought It Couldn't Get Any Worse, which I feel like is just the theme of the gross room in this podcast in general. I mean, every single week we just talk about stories that you just can't believe, you know?
I know. It's true.
Even when I posted the tampon clip the other day, somebody commented under it and was just like, never a dull moment in your life.
Yeah, and that's just like one of the many things. Like if you read all the comments on Instagram under it, it's a lot of nurses and medical professionals like, yeah, we see this in urgent care all the time. We see this in the ER all the time. So it's just like one of the many things that happen every day.
Yeah, so with this story, a man and his girlfriend were in an argument. So I guess it escalated to the point where she stabbed him and then he stabbed her right back, but in the neck, and her stab wound was fatal. So of course he had to take it a step further.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we hear about people getting murdered every single day, and it's kind of, especially all of you people that are into true crime and stuff, it's just like, okay, so a boyfriend and a girlfriend got into a fight and one stabbed and killed each other. It's like, okay, so what? That's like every day, right? No, it gets interesting because when they went to go investigate this, the guy literally took this woman's skin off of her body and gave her an autopsy, basically. I mean, we would never, in normal circumstances, remove the skin like that. But on top of that, he actually gave her an autopsy and took all of her organs out. So the photos for this are just so horrific. It shows this woman who has been skinned to death, and also her organs were in this bag, and like he tried to shove them down a sewer, but it looks like what we call a viscera bag. So when we do an autopsy and we take out the intestines and the heart and the lungs and stuff, we usually keep pieces of it aside with the pathology in case we need to go back to it in a jar that stays in the morgue. But the majority of the organs go in a viscera bag. Viscera means organs. And we put them in that bag, and then we put them back in the body when we send them back to the funeral home. And this just looks like that bag full of organs. I mean, they're not even intact. He just ripped them out or cut them out. And
well, the picture of her corpse is really disturbing because it looks like he started at her face and was working his way down her body. So she's just missing giant chunks of skin and her organs. And then it kind of stops mid-thigh. So you're like, did somebody catch him smack in the middle of this and he didn't finish what he was doing? And then the police picture of him, he's covered in blood. It's a very disturbing scene. And this bag of the organs was seemingly like emptied out or fell over or something. So they're just spilled along the street. Can you even imagine walking across something like that?
No. And apparently he tried to flush a bunch of them down the toilet too.
Yeah. So
he and his arrest photo is in this post in the grocery room as well. And he looks insane. He's like covered in blood and he just has this very weird smirk on his face. It's just so disturbing.
No, this is one of the more disturbing ones I've seen. I mean, that picture of her body is just, it's horrible. I can't even imagine seeing something like that as an investigator or just, I have to think of what if a family member just walked in on him in the middle of doing that? What would you even do?
I don't know, but I mean, the thing is that when these kinds of things happen, there's always someone there that has to witness the next step of it. So it's either going to be a first responder, police officer. I mean, even, people that do autopsies for a living, you think, okay, you see dead people all the time, but we still get disturbed by stuff, especially things that people do to each other. It's scary, even if you're used to seeing it,
Yeah, like do police departments have built-in therapy programs, or is that something they kind of have to figure out themselves after?
I think the more and more that we're learning about PTSD and how that has to do with a lot of the different things that are going on right now, like the lack of sleep, the exposure to things like this, things like that. They're starting to examine like, well, what's happening in this culture that's causing these types of things to happen. And it's just a combination of, before even, because I talk with Gabe a lot about this, like it's like a lot of people in the past of that culture would just be like, oh, those dudes aren't hard enough. They're just soft. And they have this kind of chip that they have to walk around and just be like, nah, that doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me. And it's just like, it's coming out more and more that stuff actually does bother people, because most people that work in these professions are normal-minded people that go home and have families, and the stuff that they see is upsetting. It disturbs them, especially if they're not able to help people or whatever. And then that accumulation of seeing that kind of trauma, it has an effect on people. I could say that too. Like when I wrote, I'm a hospital autopsy girl, right? Like and it's sad to see natural disease, but also it's kind of like, well, there wasn't really anything that you could do about this. This was going to happen they did everything that they could possibly do with the medical availability we have in this time period. You know what I mean? But when I rotated at the medical examiner's office, it started, and I wasn't there too long. You know, I was there a couple months, and it just started being a lot every day to think about having a career and just seeing that stuff every single day of like horrible things that people do to each other, and also just accidents that maybe shouldn't have happened, or even if they did happen, it's still upsetting to think, okay, this person's completely dressed and ready to go out and they just died in a car accident and they didn't even know that was happening 2 seconds before they died. Like that, it's a lot. And it takes a strong mental person to, you know, both understand that they're disturbed by it, but also be able to not let it affect them, you know?
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of lay people understand that that's what first responders and you guys are seeing on your end and how much of a toll it could take on your mental health.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, you just have to think about, like a cop goes into scenes like that all the time. They see terrible stuff. They see people abusing children. They see all this stuff. And when you're working for 25 or 30 years and you're just seeing that kind of stuff every single day, it does have an effect on people, and certain people get affected differently by it. And not to mention just the shift work in general with all of these. You could talk about fire, police, EMS. They're not sleeping normal. And then on top of that, when you experience trauma like that, it affects your sleep as well. And then that makes you make these poor decisions, like pulling out your gun maybe when you shouldn't, or using your weapon when you shouldn't, and things like that. So it's good that it's all coming to light now.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully, I'm sure some departments have this integrated in already, but I'm hoping over time it'll become more of an industry standard, just because what's the point of like letting people go through all of that emotional distress and not trying to help them when they're getting it on the job, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, this next one is called testicle disco. A 26-year-old male from New Delhi went to the doctor because he was experiencing pain and swelling in his testicles along with some fevers for about a month. So doctors decided to do an ultrasound, and what did they find?
So they did an ultrasound on his testicles, and they saw thousands of little tiny worms live in his testicles dancing around.
Ew.
Yeah. So when they determined what was going on with this guy, so he was from New Delhi in India. So a lot of times when you see these parasitic infections, they're very specific to areas where people live in the country. So that isn't something that would happen here, but it could happen there because that organism lives there. We even have different organisms in this country where if someone presented to the hospital with that, you can say, oh, they must live in Arizona because that's where they pick that up. You wouldn't just get that in New Jersey. You know what I mean? So that's really interesting. So he had a filarial worm parasite. So a filarial worm is a thread-like needle-like worm. It's very, very thin. And I think the most disturbing part about this parasitic infection is that it's transmitted by mosquitoes.
Oh my God.
So we have in America mosquito-borne illness like West Nile virus and things like that, but there's parasitic infections that you could get from mosquitoes, which just are really disturbing. So this one, what happens is that this organism, which is called Wucheria bancrofti, what happens is that this worm gets it transmitted because a mosquito is like basically injecting someone else's blood inside you, which is disgusting. The worm gets inside of your lymphatics. So your lymphatics are these little blood vessels. They're not really blood vessels, but they carry lymph fluid throughout your entire body, and they help keep fluid distributed around your body. So what happens is when these needle-like worms get inside the lymphatics, the fluid can't flow anymore, and it causes blockages, which makes, like, you ever see these people that have one gigantic leg or something like that, or a gigantic arm?
Yeah.
That's what this is, especially when they're living in other countries like this. This is what it's caused by. There's a blockage in the lymphatics that's causing that. So, I mean, you can get that from other things too, like if you have tumors or if you had trauma there and there's some kind of reason that the fluid's not flowing. But in this case, it was because those lymphatics were blocked with worms. So the good news is that you could just take a drug, anti-parasitic drug, and this can go away. And in most cases, people don't need any additional treatment.
I mean, can you really do anything to prevent this? Because even sometimes if you're using mosquito spray or bug repellent, it doesn't always work.
No, I mean, it's it's terrible. And it's something I always think about when I always want to go to like different countries. I'm always wondering like, well, what weird thing do these people have there? Like in Africa, they have a mosquito-borne illness, could be like malaria or something. Just things that you don't want to get and you don't want to be exposed to. And I don't know how you prevent mosquito bites. I know they have mosquito nets that you're supposed to sleep with and this and that, but I mean, what if you want to go outside? I don't know. I get them like when I walk out the front door, I get attacked.
It's impossible. I went outside for 30 seconds the other day to water my hanging plant and I got like 5 bites on my leg.
Oh my, I know. It's terrible. So I'm not sure. It's just kind of like, it is what it is.
This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, you have to join The Gross Room. It's so much fun. We are having another sale for just a short amount of time. You'll love it because all of the stories, or most of the stories that we talk about here on Mother Knows Death, especially with the 6 shocking stories, there's all photographs to accommodate these crazy stories. So I think the stories themselves are crazy, but then when you put the photos with it as well, it really gives you a full picture of what is going on in the world of pathology.
Yeah, so now through August 26th, you can visit thegrossroom.com to sign up for $20 for 1 year of gross.
Yeah, so $20 is a good deal because it ends up being a little bit more than 5 cents a day, and we do posts every single day. We have multiple articles and videos and photos a week, so check it out.
This next one is called Fuck the World. So one of our Gross Room members who worked at a prison submitted this one. So she said that part of her job, unfortunately, was dealing with a lot of people who were, quote, cutters. So basically they would take these homemade weapons, they would cut themselves to either, get out of their cell for a little bit or to distract the guards, basically to get attention in some type of way.
Usually when a person is a cutter, you see evidence of self-harm. Sometimes in cases with suicide, you could see injuries on the wrists or things like that. It's not necessarily a previous suicide attempt, but more people that are just cutting their skin as part of their mental illness. And she's just saying like, no, they weren't doing this in this case. They were doing it because they knew they could get out for a while or distract guards. So it wasn't because of underlying mental health conditions.
Yeah, and she said essentially they would like, quote, paint the room. So they would cut themselves, bleed into a cup, and then fill the cup with water and then just spray it all over the room to make it look much worse than it actually was.
The photos are so disturbing because it looks like the Kill Bill movie of blood just sprayed everywhere. Yeah. It's just so disturbing to think you would walk in on a prisoner like that. And she said they weren't even injured that bad. It just looked terrible because of the way they were doing it.
Yeah. So in one of these cases, one of these people that did this wrote or painted essentially "fuck the world" with bloody handprints all over the wall. How disturbing is that to walk into?
And then underneath it said, "I'm ready." Like, okay, yeah, but it is disturbing. It just looks like something you would see in a movie or something. But tell them the other story that she said, because that one was even nastier.
So in addition to this being totally disgusting and really disturbing to walk in on a scene like this, only to figure out the person is like actually okay, thank goodness, there's some other disturbing things that go down in the prison. So she said in some other cases, some of the prisoners will smear their feces all over the walls or on the windows to get attention. And in one case, she told the prisoner to clean it up, and then he went over to the wall and licked it.
Yeah, that was so gross. Yeah. And it's clearly for like some attention thing or whatever. You know what's important too to talk about with the cutting situation? So obviously, your first question is going to be, well, how are prisoners having access to knives, right? Because that's just not good. They could either hurt themselves or hurt other prisoners. But she was talking about some of the different ways that prisoners are making sharp weapons in order to hurt themselves. So she said that they would take batteries out of the back of a radio or something they had, or they would go to, when they went out into the yard, they would break off a piece of the metal fence, or they would take their toothbrush and then they would bring it back to their cell and they would file it into sharp points on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the problem when you have people that have a lot of time on their hands. They don't have access to phones or much entertainment. They start getting very creative with ways to make weapons.
Yeah, I also Googled, like total, like naive Google search, how do you make a shiv? And then it's like people take silverware from the dining hall, or they take like bones from meat they were eating and then file those down and hide them. It is scary, but like to your point, if you have all the time in the world to sit there and think of how to do stuff, then people are going to figure it out.
I think that a certain part of it is kind of cool to think that. I mean, it's not cool that they do it, obviously, but you think about back in the day when people didn't have any knowledge of anything and were just living in the woods and trying to survive, just how you look around and you're able to make tools based on what you need and stuff. It's kind of interesting.
Well, I was talking to the girls about this the other day because in 4th grade, we had to read this book called The Hatchet or something, where this 10-year-old boy was dropped off in the middle of the woods by his parents with just a hatchet, and he had to learn how to survive for a month or something. And I'm like, you guys can't.
I hope that wasn't based on a true story.
I don't think it was, but I was making the point because they were complaining that they couldn't get into their iPad or something, and I'm like, you guys have no idea. Just you'll survive without your iPad.
Oh,
Relax.
I was having this conversation with them the other day because we went to the shore and we took a ride to a shore that we went to Seaside Heights, which is kind of further than that's our normal shore, right? It took us like an hour and a half to get there. And they said, "Oh, could we bring the iPads?" And I was like, "No, you don't need to have an iPad. Like just look out the window and enjoy life, like,
Yeah.
So we went and they were fine on the way there, and then on the way home it just was like a whole different story, like like I'm just so bored. I don't know. Like it was, and they had coloring books, just a window. They had normal stuff. So then I went on this big tangent with them, and I was just like, dude, when I was a kid, I remember when those little TV screens came out on the back of the driver's seats that the kids could see in the back, right? This conversion van came out, and Mom and Pop, they were like, "Oh, we're going to go look at that." So we go to the car dealership and we're there all day. And we were finally like, "Oh my God, yes." Because we took a lot of road trips. So you driving to Florida, whatever. And we were like so excited as little kids. Oh, we're finally going to have this, because when we used to drive to Florida every single year, it would be like me and my brother and sister in the back seat, and my brother was in a car seat the whole way to Florida with no iPads, video games, nothing. It was like you had a coloring book and some crayons, and that's it. End of story. And you were smushed with a huge car seat in between, right? And I'm trying to tell them, like, you'll survive, trust me. And what like Mama and Papa were like, "Oh, we can't afford to get this van. It's too much money." And we were like, "Oh, cool." So then the next year we just went again with our coloring books and whatever from Kmart, And I get so annoyed because I just think they still had my phone attached to the car. So they were listening to all their annoying Taylor Swift songs the whole way there and back, which we just never had.
No.
Like we would have a Walkman with batteries that ran out. My parents never had backup batteries. So that was that with a tape you made yourself. I'm like, get over it. You guys are so whiny.
I mean, I was even thinking about how when I was around their age, I guess I got a Game Boy Color, but then you were still limited in that because it didn't have like an LED screen. So you could only play it during the day. And I remember for my birthday one year, you got me a light that attached on it so I could play at night.
That was so dumb.
But yeah. I was like, this is peak technology. So
yeah, exactly.
They have no idea.
And back then I was just like, you don't know how lucky you are. Like when I was a kid, Nintendo was plugged into the wall and it sucked kind of. Like when it worked, it was awesome, but it never worked and you had to pull the cassettes out and blow on them and all this crazy shit. Like And I seriously just sound like an old person anymore talking to my kids. Just, we didn't have phones. Our friends couldn't get a hold of us whenever, just,
Oh, I've totally segued into that chapter of my life where I'm like, when I was a kid, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's the difference between when my mom and dad were kids and I was 10 years old is just it was way closer than it is now between them. Think about this, like, even you're just talking about when you were a kid, right? With the PlayStation situation.
Yeah.
Or the
Game Boy.
Playboy, whatever. Game Boy, whatever. Whatever the frick it's called.
There's a problem if I was looking at Playboys when I was 8.
But seriously, like, that is so much different than what the kids are experiencing, and you're really not that much older than them, you know?
No, I mean, the shift in technology over the last 20, 30 years has been absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's better for people, honestly. It's just because then there's a situation, like, I do try to take their devices away from them because I really have this theory that people need to be bored, because otherwise, I mean, in this case with the prisoners, it's not really the greatest thing that they're bored because they're doing bad things. But just even think about that prisoner, for example. If they were not in prison, would they ever just figure out how to use something like that and use your brain? No, because you're just looking at a phone all day and not thinking about anything.
Well, I've been saying this for years because, this topic comes up in art school a lot. Like, why don't people paint like Michelangelo anymore? And it's simply like, there are so many distractions today. There was nothing going on when Michelangelo was painting. That's why he was able to nail the craft like that. You just have to think about things like that.
I know. And I figured out, like, when I was a kid that I was really good at doing art, and I'm sitting there doing my nails the other day, and Lillian, she's interested and she wants to learn, and she's like, she's pulling up these designs online and saying, let's try to paint these, right? So I pull it out and I do it exactly how the pictures are she's showing me. And she's like, how are you so good? How do you know how to do that? And I was like, because I sat there for hours and years of my life doing it. I didn't have a phone. I would have Saved by the Bell on the TV in the background maybe, but I sat at my desk for hours doing shit. That's how you figure out you're good at anything,
Side note, remember when we were playing Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader in the car the other day, and the answer was Leonardo da Vinci, and Lillian said Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, that was amazing. That was actually really fun, though. I couldn't believe if those questions are all for fifth graders, then I think we're all kind of screwed.
I think you were doing really good. Me and Gabe were really struggling to get there.
I was pissed about the Normandy Beach one, honestly. I was like, I'm literally going over this book that Lillian's doing for her summer reading on D-Day. So I was like, I know the answer to this, and I understand what Gabe was saying, but
I also call bullshit on some of these questions this was just a random website where I found them, but I didn't learn about World War II until 11th grade. So I would definitely not have known that answer in 5th grade.
I didn't learn it until this summer when I was doing summer reading with my kid.
All right, let's get on to the next one. This one's called Noodle on Noodle. So a 46-year-old male was found unconscious in the bathroom of his home. His wife had heard him screaming, but the bathroom door was locked and she wasn't able to get to him quickly.
So she gets in, she finally breaks open the door, she gets in, and he's down. He clearly needs an ambulance, so she calls for help and they come, and he ends up getting pronounced dead. So they bring him to the morgue to do an autopsy, and they are shocked what they see at external exam, because this guy, he's 46-year-old, he appears healthy, normal weight, everything like that, but he has a giant pocket pussy on his penis.
Yeah, but let's
like a homemade one.
It's important to note that when she found him and when he was brought to the hospital, he was fully clothed, so this was not an obvious discovery, right?
Yeah, she didn't see it. Yeah, it's not like he was taking a shower and he was found down. He was found down in his clothes.
Yeah, so I don't understand how you wouldn't see it through somebody's pants, but I guess if you're panicking and you're in an emergency situation, you're not like, what's that giant bulge out of your pants? I don't
Maybe
know.
he was wearing baggy pants. I don't
And
know.
my question was, did he just wear it and walk around, or was he?
I don't know, because when they checked it, he did. They said that there was no evidence that he had ejaculated on it. So I mean, I don't know how much testing they did on it. Maybe there wasn't clear evidence of any kind of fluid on it. I don't know if he cleaned it off in between, if this was a new one, why he was wearing it. But when they did the autopsy, they dissected his heart and they found that he had a blockage in his left anterior descending coronary artery. So when you have a blockage in one of the arteries that feeds oxygenated blood to the heart, that could stop oxygen from getting to part of the heart, which is a very crucial part that is needed. And that part of the heart dies off or it infarcts. And that's another description for a heart attack. So he had a heart attack. So this giant, I don't know if it was pipe insulator or a pool noodle. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, and he was a contractor, so
it probably was pipe insulator then that he had around his penis, has nothing to do with his death.
But they went out of their way to tell her about it, which clearly she didn't see it, I guess, in his pants or didn't know about it. So to your point, it was kind of unnecessary to let her know about it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why they would tell the wife. They said, "Do you know why he had this on his penis?" And listen, like if the investigators determined that he died from a heart attack, it's kind of like, in my opinion, does she really need to know that? No, it had nothing to do with why he died. And if you're any person like telling a wife that, they're either going to be embarrassed because they did know about it, or they're going to be terribly upset because they didn't know about it.
And in her case, she said she didn't know he ever used something like this. So
yeah, so it's like you lose your husband at 46 years old, which is just a tragedy anyway, because there's a possibility that they have a young family and everything like that. And on top of that, now you got to give her all this anxiety and being upset because of this weird finding that had nothing to do with why he died anyway.
Well, is there any possibility maybe that they thought he was in the middle of jerking off but didn't finish, and that could have led him to having the heart attack, which is why they asked her about it?
I think, but what's the difference? Like, I don't know. I just, they checked it. There was nothing on it that indicated that that's what he was doing. He might have been doing that, but at the same time, he was found with his pants zipped up and everything. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me, because then the next time they had sex, he would have died and had a heart attack. It's not like jerking off increases your risk of death like that, like,
yeah,
it was going to happen to him anyway. And he was a smoker. So this isn't insane. Smoking damages your blood vessels, and he's 46, but like sometimes people start smoking when they're 12 years old, and this damage over time could definitely cause injury to your blood vessels, especially the ones around your heart. So it's not super absurd to think that he died from that, but I don't know. I see that they would put it in the autopsy report because it's part of the external exam, but to actually talk to her about it, to try, like, you're not trying to solve something here. Just put that was found along with the clothes he was wearing, kind of, and let her, if she was going to read the report, because so many people don't read the report,
Yeah, I mean, it totally wasn't necessary if they determined it wasn't why he died, that they would go out of their way to mention it to her when she could have just read it or just maybe not known about it.
Yeah, but you guys have to see this autopsy photo and just imagine being like a person like me that just is doing this external exam and seeing this ginormous piece. I mean, I would say that it's way larger and thicker than a pool noodle.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wrap my head around how they didn't see it when he got there, but I don't know. Unless the only thing I could think of is maybe he was in the middle of using it, and then he started feeling like he was getting sick or whatever symptoms,
and quickly zipped his pants.
Yeah, exactly. But otherwise, I'm like, was he just walking around with this thing on? Because that's even crazier.
Maybe it was insulating his pipe.
All right, next. All right. Our last shocking story is called Fine Dining. So on the show, we talk a lot about people that eat really weird things and have really strange addictions. I mean, there's literally an entire television show called My Strange Addiction.
That show's so good.
It really is so good.
It's so great because when we were just at Knoebels and it was on the TV there, and the kids are like, "What is this?" And I was like telling them about it, and they were really interested. And we turned on the episode where the guy had the relationship with his car.
Oh my God!
And the kids were like, "What do you mean?" But you know what's so hilarious? So every single day when we're in the kitchen, Lucia is always leaning against the refrigerator or hanging all over the refrigerator, right? And Lillian was like, "Lou, I think you have a relationship with the refrigerator." So now we're like fucking with her every day, and we're just like, listen, because I'm just like, if you guys scratch or mess up my fridge, I'm gonna kill you, right? and now I'm just like, Lou, break up with the refrigerator and find something else to have a relationship with. It's so funny.
Well, yeah, when I was looking through a list of like the weirdest things people have eaten on there, but I guess the show is not strictly about things people consume. You know, it's the guy with the car. Another woman was married to a carnival ride, which I never saw that episode. Did you?
I never saw that episode either. I did love the one at the lady that slept with the hairdryer on because she liked the feeling of the heat. Because I was like, I understand that one.
Oh,
but
I
she
totally
should just get an
understand.
electric blanket.
No, I totally understand that one. But some of the weirder things people were ingesting were dryer sheets. In my article, we talked about the human ashes, nail polish, and then some person was even eating bullets and broken glass. They really liked that. So
Remember the couch cushions?
oh my God.
There was a lady that was eating couch cushions. She like cut the couch and was eating the cushion off of the couch.
So if you think all this,
It's so great.
so if you think all this stuff is bad, this one woman shows up to the emergency room with severe abdominal pain, and you won't even believe what they found in her x-ray.
So they're looking at her x-ray and they're like, wait a second. Is that a fork? Is that a spoon? What's going on here? It looked like there was a lot of them. And when they went in and actually did surgery to remove this, because obviously they wouldn't be able to put a scope down her throat and take these items out. So they had to cut her open to get it out. And they found 78 pieces of silverware. 78, like a full-on set of fork and spoon that they were able to serve like 36 people.
Yeah, I guess she didn't quite
Or
take
39 people.
I guess she didn't quite take a liking to eating knives. She just liked the forks and spoons because that's all that was in there.
Oh, they asked her. And she said that she didn't have an appetite for knives.
Like at this point, what is the difference? They're literally all the same thing. They're just shaped differently.
Maybe she was scared that it was going to cut her or something. I don't know. I just like listen. These cases, it's the same with sticking stuff up your butt. How the hell do you? If I swallow a big vitamin, it hurts my throat. How do you swallow so many of these things in one sitting? And it's true because I've seen this at work. You were talking about the person that ate broken glass. Like I've gotten specimens from a guy that was eating glass and knives, like tips of knives. I mean, it's so crazy to think that people are doing that.
I mean, we were just talking the other day. I don't even know if I was saying it on here, but I was saying how I'm in this really bad habit of putting my embroidery needle in my mouth when I'm in the middle of adjusting something on my project, and how I'm so scared I'm going to swallow it, and how at the Mutter Museum they just had drawers and drawers and drawers filled with sewing needles and bobby pins that women had swallowed.
Yeah. Mine's going to be a bobby pin because I'm always, when I do my bun, I'm always putting a bobby pin in my mouth. And I'm like, what? One of the kids will come in and like scare the shit out of me one day and I'll like swallow it by accident or something.
But as a scientist, though, doesn't this impress you about the ability of the human body?
Oh, yeah, it does. It's quite interesting. So there's a difference, though. Like you and I, if we swallowed a bobby pin or a sewing needle, that would be an accidental thing, where this one is intentional, and it's not really a suicidal action. They're not trying to hurt themselves. It's more of it either has to do with two things. It could have to do with a mental illness of some sort. A lot of the times that guy that I was getting that specimen from, I told you, with the shards of glass and the knife tips, he had schizophrenia. But it also can be due to a nutritional deficiency. So all of these people you were talking about, whether they're eating ashes or couch cushions or dryer sheets, it could be because they're lacking certain vitamins or minerals in their body, and they have this condition called pica where they crave things to eat that have no nutritional value. And a lot of times you could see this, people that do this, like your grandmother who eat ice like a crazy person. She's just like, can I get an iced tea and an extra cup of ice? And we'll just sit there and eat ice. Like that's one of the big ones that you're not really supposed, if you have this craving for ice, you should go get blood work and see, what's going on, because that's not a normal craving to want to eat things that have no nutritional value like that.
Yeah.
I always wonder that because I could sit there and eat a whole entire container of rainbow sprinkles.
Well, those
and they're
are
like
delicious.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't, I guess they're kind of sugar, maybe kind of candy. I don't know. I'm like, they're not really food.
I wouldn't count sprinkles though, because they're sweet and they're kind of a little dessert or snack.
Yeah.
They do leave that gross waxy texture in your mouth when you eat a lot of them, but they are good. Like they taste good. It's not like you're just, one year I made these Italian cookie ornaments out of clay, and we made all these little sprinkles out of clay. If you were just eating the clay sprinkles, then yeah, you have a problem. But if you're eating real ones, then
there was a girl on My Strange Addiction that was eating clay.
I don't understand that.
These things are so terrible, especially something like clay, because it just will like lump together in your intestines and just cause huge problems. I'm just so I would be so scared about that. You know what I mean?
I'm too much.
And what would your shits be like? Jesus.
Yeah, I'm too much of a
literally shitting a brick.
Literally, I'm way too much of a hypochondriac to just eat anything like that. I could never do it. It could never be me. And the thought of sticking a whole fork or spoon down your throat, I would feel like I was choking. To your point, like I've been taking these vitamins that are gigantic, and I feel them sometimes just sitting there, and it bothers me so bad. I can't imagine sticking something that large.
Pica happens in pregnancy sometimes too. It's not uncommon for that to happen.
Great.
So it's well, I'm just saying, like you say right now that that's not something you would do, and then all of a sudden your body's like in this state, and then you're like, okay, all rules are off. I have different things that I like to eat now and whatever. So.
All right. Well, if you guys have a shocking story, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. And we will be back next week with some more news, but we will have an awesome external exam on Thursday with Matt Mangino.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that interview because he's awesome. And we're going to be talking a lot about the death penalty. So stay tuned for that because, of course, I had 1,000 questions about that.
Yeah, and I just finished editing that interview, and it was absolutely incredible. So I can't wait for you guys to hear it.
All right. See you guys soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.